is a CBC News special presentation.
And good morning from the nation's capital, where today Canada will mark the arrival of its next Governor General. Julie Payette will take over from David Johnston in a ceremony steeped in tradition, music, military honors, and lots of symbolism. The Governor General is the Queen's representative in Canada. It's sort of a big deal. She's also Canada's head of state and, for those of you who don't know, Canada's Commander-in-Chief. There have been, to date, 28 GGs in Canada's history. Only 3 of them were women. But after today's ceremony, Payette will be the 4th and the 29th Governor General of Canada. That's Parliament Hill on a lovely fall day. But just here, this is the scene at Rideau Hall Gate. Governor General designate, as we are going to call her, until she officially is sworn in or appointed into her position. Julie Payette, she is inside with her son, 14-year-old Laurier. With her inside Rideau Gate is Heritage Minister Mélanie Joly and the Secretary to the Governor General, Steve Wallace. In about 15 minutes or so, they will leave in that car there for Parliament Hill. David Cochrane is keeping watch at that location. We'll be back to him in just a moment. I should point out that Julie Payette is staying at Rideau Gate until some renovations are done inside Rideau Hall. Good morning. I'm Rosemary Barton here from Ottawa. Thanks for joining us today on what will be one of those classic Ottawa days, full of ceremony, lots of politicians, and lots of excitement too on this, the official installation of the Governor General. There is lots to watch and see over the next few hours here in the nation's capital. It is, of course, the official arrival. Installation is the official word of the new Governor General, who is for now the Governor General designate, Julie Payette. A Governor General a little bit different than all the others, given her vast experience and her time and space. That's not something every Governor General can say. Here to help us through our coverage throughout the morning is Philippe Lagacé. He's an associate professor and the Barton Chair at, not related to me, at Carleton University's Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. He is also an expert in the process, the Westminster system, and will be able to correct me throughout the morning. It's basically what I'm counting on him to do. Good to see you, Philippe.
Only on occasion. Thank you to be here.
Let's just remind people the role of the Governor General in this country. Yes, she is the head of state. The Queen's...
I wouldn't say that.
Oh, okay, go on. Queen's representative. Okay, start correcting me now. Here we go.
So that term has been used before for the Governor General, but
yes.
Technically speaking, the Queen is one echelon above and personifies the state. So we say head of state on account of that. So
okay.
I'll start with that, and that'll be my first correction of the morning.
And I'm happy to take them.
I even heard you before during the presentation. I winced a little bit, but I'll let this one pass.
All right. Why do we say installation? Why don't you start there too? If we're going to do a whole correct Barton a few hours.
No, I'll stop there. I'll be good. I'll be good.
All right. So what is the role of the Governor General then, other than, as you say, the Queen's representative in Canada?
Well, we can divide it into, I'd say, about 4 roles, but I think the most important one that we consider is the constitutional function. Mm-hmm. So that really is, to your point, the head of state functions that the Governor General performs, and that therefore the Governor General Payette will perform. And those are pretty wide-ranging. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the Governor General is a constitutional fire extinguisher. This is an office that you don't really want to have to use unless it's the worst possible case scenario.
Yeah.
And the 2 most important powers that this individual exercises on their own as an official are the appointment or a possible dismissal of a prime minister and taking advice on the dissolution of Parliament. Most other powers that the Governor General exercises are done on the advice of the prime minister, except in the most extreme circumstances. So as we look to the south, the country to our south, we can imagine situations where it's good to have a distinction between head of government and head of state. So even in certain cases like that, you may want to have power or authority divided, even if it's between the formal and the informal.
So, these are the rare, some of this is fairly rare. We can think back to under Stephen Harper, where there was the infamous case of prorogation with then Governor General Michaëlle Jean. Dissolution of Parliament may be something more expected. Other than those things, the Governor General role is largely symbolic. Is that fair to say?
It's very ceremonial, right? I think that's the most important thing to point out. On top of the constitutional duties, there's all the state ceremonial functions.
Which we're seeing sort of on the screen now, the beginning of that.
Right. And the idea here, and this is what distinguishes our system, let's say, from Republican systems as in France or the United States, is that you want to have a head of state function, which is separate from head of government, that does all the things that are personifying the nation, that are meant to be nonpartisan, not necessarily apolitical, because the office is inherently political. It's a political institution. Yeah. But nonpartisan, so that political parties or prime ministers who are political don't get to control or personify the state or the nation in most respects. Now that's a bit of a tension these days, and it's something that we're dealing with much differently from the UK, because they have a monarch who reigns, and therefore no prime minister can kind of match that. But for us, it's still fairly important to have orders of Canada handed out by a Governor General, not by a Prime Minister. Right. To have it understood that the Governor General represents the nation, represents the state, and therefore all Canadians, regardless of their political leanings. Okay, and we'll talk more about the role and why this choice in particular is so interesting, and what she may come to symbolize and personify for the country throughout her time in office, which is typically about 5 years. But let's go inside those Parliament buildings, where you can see the ceremonial honor guard is outside, but inside is our own Hannah Thibodeau. She is outside the Senate chamber where today's ceremony will happen, and she'll give us a sense of how that's going to unfold. Hannah.
Hey, Rosie. Well, look what I have in my midst. I do have the official program now for the installation of the 29th Governor General. In this official program, which all of the guests inside will receive, you have the coat of arms. It's not hers, though. This is the coat of arms of the Governor General of Canada, but they have released her new and official coat of arms, which I think we'll be able to see a little bit later. There's also a photograph, her official photograph, and then finally it goes on, gives her extensive CV in here, and then the exact details of how the day will unfold. And of course, inside the chamber, there is room for about 750 guests, and Ms. Payette herself has introduced about 400 of those guests. We've seen some of them arrive so far, Rosie, including former Governors General Adrienne Clarkson, as well as Michaëlle Jean, former Governor General. Her husband and daughter arrived. She isn't in attendance here today. There have been 3 premiers who have arrived so far. Of course, because we have the meeting of the premiers with the Prime Minister tomorrow. We've seen the Premier of Ontario, Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as the Northwest Territories. Those are some of the people who have arrived so far, but also former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien will be in attendance as well today. Some of the guests who will be here, but of course it all gets underway and the official installation starts inside the Senate chamber in a short time from now.
Okay, thanks for that, Hannah. We will check back with you, of course, as people start to arrive. I'm told one of the other people that, first of all, there's a bunch of astronauts there, who are going to arrive, which is pretty unusual for a Governor General installation, and also Dick Pound, who was, of course, part of the Olympics of Canada, and Julie Payette herself has played a role in particular the Own the Podium program, trying to push Olympic athletes to succeed. Let's go over to Rideau Hall Gate, where the CBC's David Cochrane is standing by to try and catch a glimpse of the Governor General designate and her son before they take off for the Hill. What's the scene there today, David?
Yeah, Rosie, after listening to Professor Lagacé, I realized how little I know about our constitutional monarchy, so I'm a little bit nervous about what I know. So please grade me on a curve, Professor. So here's what's happened. Just now, David Johnston has just left Rideau Hall in his motorcade for the final time as Governor General. He's on his way to Parliament Hill, obviously, for the installation ceremony where everything will change. And right here behind us, this is Rideau Gate. This is where Julie Payette is staying in her final hours as Governor General designate. About 10 minutes or so ago, Heritage Minister Mélanie Joly went inside along with the Stephen Wallace, who is the secretary to the Governor General. He greeted her, and she will be escorting Ms. Payette to Parliament Hill for the official ceremony. Now, she's in there with her son and some family members. We were speaking to her aunt very briefly as she and some of her nieces and family made her way in, and there's been a bit of a Governor General's designate slumber party going on here too, Rosie, because as Hannah said, 750 people in the Senate chambers. Ms. Payette has invited 400 of those people. Some of them are staying here at Rideau Gate, some in overflow at Rideau Hall, because this being such a big day, as you can imagine, a lot of friends, family, and colleagues want to be here to be part of it. So This is a very precise production today, so in about 11 minutes, my phone says it's 10:17, at 10:28 Eastern, Julie Payette will leave to make her way to Parliament Hill for the installation ceremony. And I think we can bank on that, Rosie, because nobody wants to be late for work on your first day, especially not when you're stepping in as the Queen's representative to Canada.
No, that's a good way to get fired on your first day right there. But you're right, these things do have a military precision, given that the Governor General is also the chief commander of the military here in this country. And it's part of the reason why you'll often see Governor Generals wearing the uniforms of the Canadian Forces, in fact. They do have the ability to do that. Okay, David, you send word if you see any movement there, and we'll check back with you in a little bit.
Will do.
We are waiting to hear a little bit more about some of that very long guest list that Julie Payette has assembled. But because of her life and her background, she has obviously crossed the paths of many Canadians and many different kinds of people, as well as an astronaut, engineer, head of the Canadian Space Agency, and our own Catherine Cullen took a look at just who Julie Payette is to try and give us an introduction to our Governor General designate. Here she is with that story.
Julie Payette signaling she is go and blowing a kiss.
This was Julie Payette's dream, and you can just feel her joy as it becomes reality.
The final crew member to board the space shuttle today.
I've been wanting to be an astronaut since I'm a little kid. I was growing up in Montreal in the early 1970s and watching the Apollo mission, the later Apollo mission, and thinking that that rover on the moon was great and I wanted to drive that.
She's been to space not once, but twice. In the 90s, she was selected from a pool of more than 5,000 applicants, becoming an astronaut at the same time as Chris Hadfield. In 1999, she became the second Canadian woman to go into space on the Space Shuttle Discovery.
I was happy for Julie that she's brave enough to actually go up in space.
During that trip, she supervised the spacewalk and operated the Canada arm and helped build the International Space Station.
With me, I am taking in my heart my country, my people, my home, and I hope to represent them very well.
We have main engine start.
A decade later, she went back up again.
Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour.
This time to live on the space station she helped build, making history with 2 Canadians on board at once.
Living and breathing space station with 6 people on board, a tremendous size.
It took plenty of hard work to get there. Payette is an engineer who has her pilot's license and speaks 6 languages. As if that weren't enough, she's a trained scuba diver who plays piano and has sung with Montreal Symphony Orchestra.
Madame Payette.
And, of course, she's an officer of the Order of Canada. Becoming Governor General brings a new challenge.
For the chance, the amazing chance, a second chance to serve Canada again.
One fellow astronaut is not worried about how Payette will manage.
Now, let me see. She was on the International Space Station as the first Canadian. She did 2 space shuttle flights in front of an international audience of television. I don't think she's going to have a problem.
Being the Queen's representative will be a very different kind of challenge.
Very nice to see you.
But challenges are something Julie Payette knows how to embrace. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
Okay, I hope you all feel as wildly unaccomplished as I do after watching a little bit of what we know about the new Governor General, the Governor General designate, Julie Payette. I should also just let you in on a few what the Rideau Hall calls fun facts. These are fun facts for Rideau Hall. She is 53 years old. She is the 3rd youngest Canadian Governor General in history, and she is the 2nd single Governor General who will be in office, her and her son. The first one was Vincent Massey, who was a widower when he took office back in 1952. Okay, the new Governor General also means you get some cool new equipment, sort of, things to put on your letterhead, including a new coat of arms, and they are specially designed for each Governor General. And this one, if you take a look, really does reflect who Julie Payette is and what is most important to her. The first thing you might notice, right at the center, is the wings. It symbolizes exploration, liberty, safety. Sounds about right. That's a nod to Payette's career as an astronaut. So to the astronaut helmet, right above the shield, that's cool, said to represent, obviously, the quest for knowledge beyond the world we know. Right above that, there is a line of music to symbolize her passion and love of that. And those with a keen eye for music, that would not be me, might recognize that these are notes from Alessandro Marcello's Oboe Concerto in D minor. And in fact, you'll see lots of musical references over the course of the next few hours because Madame Payette is an accomplished musician. The pair of Canadian lynx holding the shield represent us, the people of Canada. They are wearing collars of stars and laurel leaves, the French translation of Laurier, the name of Julie Payette's son. At the bottom is the planet Earth. Well, that's good. Without borders, the way Payette saw it from space. And you'll see there as well the motto, per aspera ad astra, which means through hardship to the stars. It's a motto used by astronauts to symbolize that there is hope in every situation. We just need to look for it. So that's pretty special. I just want to give you a little bit of an update on a story that we are following, of course, south of the border in the United States, which overnight has marked the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. There are, at this hour, more than 50 people dead, more than 400 injured. Lots of updates will come as many of these people are seriously injured and in hospital. We are expecting at 10:30 Eastern that the President of the United States will address the United States about this mass shooting, and we'll bring you updates and bring that to you live if we can as we bounce back and forth from an important day in this country and a tragic one in that country. Let me bring in my sidekick, that's what I'm going to call him today, Philippe Lagacé, who is an expert in all things Governor General, Westminster system, Queen, everything else that you need to know about how today is going to unfold. And I just wanted to go back to the fact that when the last Governor General, David Johnston, who you can see there on your screen, he actually has the third, I think it's the third longest mandate because he did stay on a little longer than the 5 years that normally Governor Generals get. And in your screen, you can see him arriving with his wife, Sharon Johnstone, the Prime Minister, and his wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. He was actually chosen, and I had to reread this because I had forgotten, by a selection committee that Prime Minister Harper used, which the current Prime Minister did not use. Was that, do you think that was effective in the end, that made sense to use this kind of selection committee, or is that not kind of a typical way to go about this kind of thing?
Well, I think it was a new initiative on the part of the Harper government in an effort to move away from the idea that vice-regals should be either political or should not have characteristics that you'd be looking to find in a vice-regal office.
Right.
Similarly, the Harper government was pretty keen on having vice-regal officers that were monarchists, which may sound like an odd thing, but there was some sense, I think, that some of the vice-regal officers were not necessarily as keen on the monarchy as they might be.
Could you be talking about Michael Jean there, perhaps?
Perhaps. Adrian Clarkson as well.
Adrian Clarkson, who's actually there today as well, yeah.
So some sense that you wanted them vetted by a committee that was had a view towards their particular understanding of the system and how well they were suited, and again, to move away from partisan political appointments that were seen, not necessarily that they were political, but that they were former politicians, and therefore you wanted to expand it to a wider group of people. Now, interestingly, my understanding is that vice-regal selection committee was the model that was then used for the Senate, and yet it's been abandoned for the vice-regal appointments. The Trudeau government seems to now think that vice-regal appointments are better seen going back to people of note in the community.
Accomplished people, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's really one of the main criticisms of the vice-regal selection committee under the Harper government was that who were these people? They weren't as well known as they could have been, and maybe that was one critique that could have been made.
Let's just take a moment to talk about David Johnston and his wife, Sharon Johnstone. As they get set to leave, they seem to be very well-liked, uncontroversial. They promoted reading, volunteerism. They traveled not only throughout this country multiple times, but he also went on many, many missions around the world representing the government. And he was well-liked across party lines. It wasn't, it was, as you say, it is political, but it certainly wasn't partisan in any way.
Right. Well, I think he had the chance as well to be in a constitutional situation, which is fairly stable. And I think that helps. It does make a big difference. In the case of Michael Jean, I think any of the controversies controversy that surrounded the prorogation of 2008 was a function of how Parliament was set up at the time. Governor General Johnson didn't really deal with that kind of situation, and therefore it was a bit easier for him, obviously. Fewer demands of any kind of use of his discretion in particular cases. Similarly, no call to appoint additional senators or anything like that. And in fact, the one area where it might have been more controversial when Prime Minister Harper was refusing to appoint senators, and there was a court case in BC to attempt to say, well, this is a duty. Should the Governor General have to do this even without prime ministerial advice? Those of us that are very wedded to constitutional convention recoiled in horror. But regardless, that was out there as an idea. But generally a quiet, successful, very successful term for David Johnston as Governor General. As you said, well respected across the board. Very good charitable work, setting up the Rideau Hall Foundation, and really seen as a bit of a model of how you want to act and behave as Governor General. And again, one thing to note with his term, getting back to one of the purposes of that Vice-Regal Committee, was how strongly he emphasized that he was the Queen's representative. He never had any airs of being head of state or of
you could sort of see in the small box there the Governor General designate Julie Payette leaving with her son Laurier, and because these things matter and because I also care, I'm told that she is wearing Marie Saint-Pierre, the famous Quebec designer, today. There has been a sort of general push in political circles and diplomatic circles to promote Canadian designers, so not surprising that Julie Payette would choose a Montreal designer to do that as well. She will now make her way about 10 minutes probably with the escort over to Parliament Hill, where you can see the ceremonial guard has gathered, and that of course is the Supreme Court Justice Beverly McLaughlin, who is arriving here because she will do the official swearing in of the new Governor General. She actually is coming to the end of her term as Chief Justice and will be leaving the Supreme Court in the new year. She being greeted there by Sophie Grégoire Trudeau, and that is the government's representative in the Senate, Peter Harder, who will also play a role in today's ceremony. And correct me if I'm wrong, and it's very possible that I am, but Beverly McLaughlin is also the Deputy Governor General.
That's correct.
Right. So if the Governor General is incapacitated or something, that's when she would take over, or how would that work?
Right. If certain duties, so for instance, royal assent has occasionally been granted by the Deputy.
Okay.
Those types of duties. In the absence altogether, there's also an administrator role, which is slightly different, but as a Deputy, she is able to fulfill some of those functions.
Okay. And so what we'll see over the next couple of hours is not only the arrival of the new Governor General designate, but this swearing-in process. And there's a number of oaths that she has to take. I should stop saying swearing in so that you don't get mad at me. The installation of Julie Payette. She's got 3 oaths: the oath of allegiance, the oath of the office of the Governor General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada, and the oath of the Keeper of the Great Seal of Canada, which is my personal favorite one because it comes with a prop, an actual giant seal.
It's huge. It's great. It's got an effigy of Queen Elizabeth. And
it has like a whole purpose.
It is. Yeah. It really. It is the mark of Canadian state authority. You can't get more constitutional nerdy than the Great Seal. It's fantastic.
All right, here they are entering. This is the Senate chambers, if I'm not mistaken, or are they in the rotunda? Let me just pull back. I guess that's the rotunda. Inside the center block of Parliament Hill, and they will make their way through those corridors and then down into the Senate chamber, where the official ceremony will happen. That's the Speaker of the Senate, George Fury, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Jeff Regan, and other official welcomes that will happen here on Parliament Hill as we wait for things to get underway. There'll be lots of, yes, pomp and circumstance, as is the case when you're dealing with the Queen's representative in Canada, but there'll also be lots of musical numbers that we will see throughout the course of the morning, all of them chosen or influenced by the Governor General designate, including a group that she actually played with while she was, because as we've heard, she's an accomplished musician. Here they are meeting Indigenous representatives of this country, the AFN chief Perry Bellegarde, the head of the Inuit Tapahrit Kanatami Natan Obed, Clément Chartier, the head of the Métis Federation, the Native Women's Association, and others. large Indigenous component, of course, part of the way things go these days on Parliament Hill, given the government's commitment to reconciliation. So we are standing by for Julie Payette to arrive on Parliament Hill, where the official ceremony will get underway. Let me bring you to Washington. Dip out of this for just a moment and bring you to Washington, D.C. That is the president's podium inside the White House. We are expecting President Trump to address the nation, the United States. Well, it was supposed to happen at 10:30 Eastern, obviously a little bit delayed, but he is expected to come out and speak to Americans and perhaps the entire world about the worst mass shooting in U.S. history, which happened overnight in Las Vegas, on the Las Vegas Strip, for people that have not been following the news. The death toll, over 50 people dead now, an estimated 400 people brought to hospital over the course of that evening. The suspect has been identified as Stephen Paddock, a 64-year-old man from Mesquite, Nevada. He killed himself when police found him on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Hotel, which is where he opened fire with automatic weapons on a concert, a country music festival that was taking place on the Strip. And because there were so many people there and it was so exposed, the number of injured and dead is extremely high. The death toll, again, the highest in U.S. history. The president expected to address the nation and make comments about this shooting sometime in the next few moments. And if we're not busy with our ceremony here in this country, we will bring you part of what the president has to say. Let's go back now to Parliament Hill, where the Prime Minister, his wife, and the Senate's representative, Peter Harder, standing by and waiting for Julie Payette. Why do you think the government chose Madame Payette?
Well, as we saw going through her CV, it's quite an incredible listing of accomplishments. Similarly, there is a tradition that you switch from Anglophone to Francophone, and therefore David Johnston being an Anglophone, now Julie Payette.
Although she speaks 6 languages.
Yes,
so.
indeed.
But she's a Quebecer, certainly, yes.
Right. And I think with this government, as you noted, the 4th woman, but maybe now getting into a new tradition of ensuring that we switch between men and women as well.
Yep.
And similarly, I think it's there was some hope, perhaps, to have an Indigenous Governor General, but as with all issues that surround Crown, Aboriginal, and Indigenous relations, these things are trickier than they may seem at first blush.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. So not to go, retread that, but that was a significant rumor based on some actual information. So would it have been just too complicated to have an Indigenous representative of the Crown?
Well, I think in certain circumstances, I'm by no means an expert on this, but the Indigenous scholars that I've read noted that in some cases it would have been seen as inappropriate, that somewhat tokenism at this point until reconciliation is actually accomplished.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's you could even imagine it might be difficult for somebody in that office, if you remember the Idle No More movement, insisting on meeting David Johnston.
Yeah.
And would there be a sense that, again, until reconciliation is accomplished, would it be seen as too early at this point? So I think it was probably looked into, but there are probably a number of different reasons why ultimately that ambition wasn't realized at this stage.
There was also some talk that Julie Payette was sort of on the Prime Minister's radar. He is sort of a science geek himself, frankly. He's interested in science and space, and that she wasn't initially available, and then she became available for whatever reason, and he sort of jumped on that opportunity to choose her as, and there she is, Julie Payette. Warm welcome from the Prime Minister. Yeah, go ahead, Philip.
Oh, well, my understanding is that Sophie Trudeau also played a very important part in convincing her to take the position.
Really? That's interesting. And there's Mélanie Joly as well, just behind them. And this is my first glimpse of Julie Payette's son, Laurier Payette Flynn, who's 14 and about to enter a world that maybe he hadn't imagined. There's a difference between, having a mom who's a public figure and a mom who's the Queen's representative in Canada. It's sort of going to be everywhere. So that'll be an adjustment for him as well.
And my understanding there is that Julie Payette has insisted that his privacy be respected. and that he be treated with a good deal of respect. And you can imagine how you want to grow up normally, and Canadian media are better about that than many other countries of respecting people's private lives and their families.
Yeah, we are generally, but you do now allow me to point to the two sort of points of contention when Madame Payette was named. Media were able to report that she had, in July of 2011, been at the wheel of a car and accidentally killed a 55-year-old pedestrian. There were it was a complete accident, but this did emerge as part of the public examination of Julie Payette. There was, again, an attempt to look at a second-degree assault charge in 2011. The charge was withdrawn, it was expunged, but then there became an examination into some divorce records between her and her ex-husband, which in the end were looked at, and there was nothing really in the public interest, so they were abandoned, and that probably is a credit to the Canadian media for not reporting on just what seemed to be a fairly regular divorce. But they were the two sort of points that popped up, and probably a good reminder to Madame Payette about how, yes, Canadian media are respectful of your privacy, but this is a different kind of role where the level of scrutiny is probably a little more intense than even she had anticipated.
Well, that's absolutely correct, and I think that's one thing that the new Governor General is maybe not be used to. Although it is a ceremonial function, it's still the second highest office in a Canadian state, and therefore there will be interest in it. And we have seen past vice-regal officers get involved in some levels of chicanery in some cases. So it's not out of the question to look into that.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to head to Whitby, Ontario. Whitby, Ontario is the place where there is one of her accomplishments, of course, Julie Payette's accomplishments, is that she is one of only 2 Canadian women who has gone to space, and she's inspired lots of people in this country and around the world, and that's why there is one school named after Julie Payette in Whitby, Ontario. And with some help from the Durham Regional School Board, some students came up with some advice for Julie Payette, and I like to take advice from all places, so let's have a listen to see what the kids told her.
Welcome to Julie Payette Public School in Whitby, Ontario.
Congratulations, Mademoiselle Payette. You speak many languages to represent all the people of Canada.
We are proud of how you represented Canada in space.
Good luck for all the kindergarten students at Julie Payette Public School.
Bonjour, Madame Payette. Écoute bien, nous avons les conseils pour vous.
Have confidence in yourself. That's what my mommy tells me.
N'oubliez pas de boire votre café le matin pour ne pas vous endormir.
The Governor General should make wise decisions for Canada.
Madame Payette, you inspire the students at our school to be the best that we can be.
Tu nous as montré comment nous dépasser. Sur la Terre comme dans l'espace, tu nous apprends à viser haut.
Vous m'inspirez à travailler fort pour atteindre mon but de devenir un joueur de baseball professionnel.
You now have a new career as being Canada's new Governor General. To me, this shows it doesn't matter how old or how young you are. You can still make a big difference inside this world.
Madame Payette, we want to share our vision of Canada for the future.
My vision of Canada is that we will be an eco-leader country. Canada will be more conservative of our energy and gradually stop relying on resources that will harm nature.
Nous aimerions que vous présentiez le Canada comme une place où toutes les races, cultures et croyances sont acceptées.
Let others know that Canada is a place where no one is afraid to be different.
A land of diversity, and where the land of First Nation rights are acknowledged.
Canada is a place where children dare to dream, aspire, and become.
We are proud to call Canada home. We are proud of you,
the 29th Governor General of Canada.
Madame Payette, gouverneure générale du Canada, c'est avec plaisir, mais aussi avec beaucoup de fierté, que tous les membres de la communauté de l'école Julie Payette veulent vous féliciter pour votre nouveau poste et pour cette belle aventure qui commence pour vous. Vous continuez à nous inspirer à viser plus haut et à oser rêver. Toutes nos félicitations.
Gasson is at the Julie Payette Elementary School with some of those kids. We're going to bring you there. The Red Chamber is standing by. There's lots of people gathering there. But first, let's give these kids their 15 minutes of fame. Ali, what can you tell us about how excited they are for today?
Oh man, they are so excited. Trying to choose anybody to speak with is impossible. They know so much about space and politics. It's a pretty smart bunch. Now, this school is pretty new. It opened up in 2011. It's a bilingual school, so that's very fitting to be named after a woman who speaks 6 languages. And oh yeah, of course, there is her storied career as an astronaut. And as I said, science is huge at this school. Just, I mean, take a look at the excitement. Can I get like a woohoo? Hello. So let's talk to some of the kids as promised. Liam, come on up. I want to ask, okay, what grade are you in?
I'm grade 6.
Okay, what was your favorite fact to learn about Julie Payette?
Well, my favorite thing is that she can speak 6 different languages on top of being a mother, an astronaut, and now to be Governor General. I sometimes stop to think, like, how does she do it all in such little time?
Yeah, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a professional soccer player.
Nice. All right. Okay, let's bring in some friends here. Alex, I want to know what one of your favorite things is about Julie Payette.
Well, one of my favorite things is that she was just watching TV one day, and that gave her a dream to become an astronaut, and she followed that dream and pushed through all the consequences and actually succeeded.
So she saw it, she believed it, and became it. Yep. So is that now your motto as well?
Yep.
All right, good luck. All right, I want to bring in Sharifa as well. What grade are you in?
7.
Awesome. Okay. What is your favorite fact that you learned about Julie Payette?
I love that she is a francophone, so she speaks English and French, and I love that she always stays focused on the things that matter, and she was a musician, an athlete, an engineer, and a scientist.
Yeah, you can name anything. She probably was it. You want to be a dancer, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, good luck. And lastly, I want to bring in Isaac here. What grade are you in?
I'm in grade 8.
Awesome. What's your favorite thing about Julie Payette?
I think my favorite thing is that she was the 2nd Canadian in space, and that makes me very proud as a Canadian citizen.
So I want to know, as an astronaut, what is that experience going to allow her to do now in this, governmental role?
I think it's definitely going to help her visualize the Earth and all the other countries without borders. And I think that's going to help her just in general throughout being a Governor General.
Cool. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Isaac. Okay. Pop quiz. She is not going to be the only famous astronaut in Parliament. Can anybody name who that is? I want to see a show of hands. Okay. Bingo. All right. My man over here. What do you got? Who do you think it is?
Mark Gatineau, the Minister of Transportation.
Boom. I didn't even coach him. He knew his cabinet and everything. That's pretty impressive, right?
I'm impressed.
First, I want to show you guys, right?
He could probably take my job.
Yeah. These kids, right? I mean, they also have a front row seat. CBC hooked them up with a live feed. They're watching you. They're going to be watching the ceremony underway very soon with the rest of us across Canada. I'll send it back to you, Rosie.
Okay, thanks for that, Ali Chiasson, and thanks to all the kids. I hope you enjoy the ceremony. We'll try and keep it entertaining, and Philippe Lagacé will try and teach you a few things. If you're listening. They don't care now. Okay. That's fun. It's nice to have the kids' perspective on someone who is very accomplished and goes to a school by their name. Just to give you a little an update, in fact, Madame Payette is so accomplished that she is actually going to speak without notes today when we hear from her inside the Red Chamber. We're told by the Governor General's office, by Rito Hall, that she will speak to Canadians from the heart. Even I don't like to speak without notes, so I look forward to hearing what that sounds like. I'll tell you a little bit more about how she's approaching the day and some of the symbolic things that she has brought with her, and we'll bring you back inside the Red Chamber to see cabinet members and other special invited guests as the morning continues. But first, we want to bring you back to Toronto and the CBC's John Northcott to give us an update on those tragic developments in Las Vegas that happened overnight. Still standing by to hear from the U.S. president at this hour. But John will give us the very latest for now. John.
Thanks, Rosemary. A number of developments in that horrific attack in Las Vegas. More than 50 people are dead, and a staggering 406 people have been taken to hospital. That was the terrifying scene at the Harvest Music Festival when rounds of gunfire rained down from the 32nd floor of the hotel next door. It's now the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history. Police say 64-year-old Stephen Paddock was the gunman. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack, saying the shooter converted to Islam months ago. Las Vegas police have not commented on that claim. This is the scene right now at the White House in Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump will be speaking about the Las Vegas shooting. We'll bring you his statement when it happens. This is a fast-moving story, but here's what else we know right now. The attacker, Stephen Paddock, was a resident of Mesquite, Nevada, about 125 kilometers northeast of Las Vegas. Until now, his only contact with police was for a traffic violation. He checked into the Mandalay Bay Hotel on September 28th. He was found dead in the hotel room there with as many as 10 firearms. It's believed he was the sole gunman. Meanwhile, at least 50 people are dead, including at least one Canadian. More than 400 have been taken to hospital. Authorities are still working to reunite families with those who were separated in the chaos. A number of Canadians were in that crowd when the shooting started. CBC News Network spoke to two people from Vancouver who were at the concert.
It's not a situation that you think you're ever going to be in. You don't think it's ever going to happen to you. You know, you see it in movies and on TV, and then it happens, and, you know, all you can think about is just the people around you and, you know, talking to your loved one again, you know, talking to your mom again, talking to your brother again. That's really, you know, all that was running through my mind at that point, and along with keeping her safe.
It doesn't even feel like that long ago. It was hours ago, but honestly, it feels like it could have been 10 minutes ago, and it's really difficult to hear those shots.
It was about, I'd say, 25 minutes into his set. He was the last performer of the weekend. We were situated towards the back of the festival ground, so the main stage was in front of us. There was a mosh pit in front of that, probably, I'd say, 400, 500 yards from where we were on these metal bleachers. And we started hearing these pops in quick succession, 7 or 8 pops at a time, just kind of like... And to be honest with you, at first everybody kind of got startled by it. We looked around and we were like, you know, it's probably fireworks or, you know, bottle rockets or something like that. So nobody really thought anything of it. And then 5-6 seconds later, I heard it again. And at this point, we were still, I guess, looking up at the stage, but we saw the performer, Jason Aldean. He basically he ran backwards off the stage. All the house lights came up from the stage, and then we just saw like this rush of people from, I guess, that were down on the floor, running back towards us where we were. And then at the same time on these bleachers, a gentleman behind us, I think he might have been ex-military or something like that, said that's like those are gunshots, or like there's gunshots or something. And everybody just pretty much hit the deck right away.
Two Canadians who were very lucky to escape unharmed when that mass shooting took place in Las Vegas. CBC News has learned that a Canadian has been killed. Parents of Jordan McDillon of Maple Ridge, Ontario, say he was a victim of the attack. Now back to Rosemary Barton in Ottawa. Rosemary?
Thanks for that, John. That's the CBC's John Northcott. Obviously, with so many people killed, we will continue to update things throughout the coming hours out of Toronto and here in this studio as things unfold. Let's bring you into the Red Chamber. Can we do that? No? No, maybe not. There we go. That's the Red Chamber, where the ceremony is just beginning for the installation of Canada's 29th Governor-General, Julie Payette. Lots of dignitaries there in the crowd. Seats are hard to get inside that Red Chamber, but you can see in the middle the federal cabinet seated around, and in and amongst them various dignitaries that have been invited either by the government or by the Governor-General designate herself, including members of the Supreme Court, the Governor General, who he is still the Governor General, David Johnston, and his wife Sharon Johnston. There are other former Governor Generals in attendance, including Adrienne Clarkson and her husband, representatives of Michaëlle Jean, her husband and daughter, because she herself is not in attendance. Former Prime Minister, I saw Jean Chrétien in the crowd there before, as well as a bunch of astronauts too, because Julie Payette's got that whole astronaut thing going for her. What if you had to guess about, because each Governor General sort of has to take up a cause. They sort of decide on something they want to do and promote, and in the case of David Johnston, it seemed to be volunteerism, literacy, those kinds of things. I don't know if Julie Payette will just naturally take up knowledge, innovation, science.
And sport organizations. In this way,
that this government places on science, and in particular women in science. So I suspect that might be something that she emphasizes. On the cultural side, perhaps music, given what we noted in her coat of arms, that would be another area where she would excel. But evidence, science.
Roberta Bondar for people who are just watching. Keep going, yeah.
These types of things I suspect will be pretty front and center, but she might surprise us. It's difficult to predict at this point.
Yeah.
A little bit of note, this might be interesting to the viewers. Why are we in the Senate? Because the Crown and the Crown's representative can't be in the House of Commons. So
that's a fun Philip fact, yes.
So we can't know. Ever since Charles I burst in and attempted to arrest some members of the House of Commons, it's now been a fairly significant convention that the Crown and the Crown's representatives do not enter the House of Commons.
Just in case someone tries to overthrow someone, yes. Here's the official party arriving, and soon you will see the Governor General designate as well. The Prime Minister, the Supreme Court Justice Beverly McLaughlin, Senate Representative, Speaker of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Commons, Mélanie Joly.
Please be seated.
Should also just tell viewers as you watch Madame Payette enter the Red Chamber that she is, we are told, wearing the last spike brooch on her coat. It's a diamond brooch made by one of the last two spikes put in place to complete the Pacific Railway. And it's been previously worn by Jeanne Sauvé, Adrian Clarkson and Michael Jean.
La gouverneure générale désignée, Mme Julie Payette, fera son entrée accompagnée du chef d'état-major de la Défense, le général Jonathan Vance, du commissaire de la Gendarmerie royale du Canada par intérim, le sous-commissaire Dan Dubois, et du secrétaire du gouverneur général, M. Stephen Wallace. An engineer, scientific broadcaster, and corporate director, Miss Julie Payette was an astronaut for 2 decades, flying 2 missions in space. Her experience and her passion for science, languages, sport, and music will serve her well in her new role as she continues to inspire Canadians and bring them together. Here to sing our royal anthem as the Governor-General-designate makes her official entry is Daniel Taylor, who is recognized as Canada's star countertenor and our country's most prolific recorded artist. Veuillez vous lever pour l'entrée officielle et demeurer debout pour notre hymne royal, Dieu protège la reine, qui sera interprété par Daniel Taylor. Please rise for the official entry and remain standing for the singing of God Save the Queen. Veuillez vous asseoir. You may be seated. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Algonquin Nation on whose traditional and unceded territory we are gathered today. And I would like to invite Elder Claudette Commanda to officially open today's ceremony. For the last 30 years, Algonquin Elder Commanda has promoted First Nations people, history, and culture at the university level as a student, professor, and chair of the Aboriginal Education Council. She is currently the executive director of the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers, a national organization that promotes and protects First Nations culture, languages, and traditional knowledge. L'aînée algonquine Claudette Commanda sera accompagnée de Jonathan Pitseolac, un jeune Inuit qui fera une danse au tambour, d'Olivier Boulette, un violonneux métis, et des danseurs métis Prairie Fire.
Madame Payette, Prime Minister Trudeau, Chief Justice, honorable ministers and judges, distinguished guests, Pijaj et Goma, Anishinaabe, bienvenue à la territoire des Algonquins. Welcome to the territory of the Algonquin people. Madame Payette, as an Algonquin woman, a mother, a grandmother, and a citizen of this land, I am honored to welcome you. I am honored to be part of your momentous installation here today. In accordance with Anishinaabe law and responsibilities, we must give thanks to the Creator. We must ask for blessings for whom we acknowledge here today. I humble myself before the Creator and my ancestors, and I say, Miigwech Gishiminado Onje Nongum. Ne Buksendam, Minopamadzwin Onje Julie Payette Ashishkakina. Madame Payette, may your ancestors and the ancestors of this land guide you with good spirits. May they give you courage, strength, wisdom, protection, and good health. And peace unto you and your family, and to all you shall meet in your journey as Canada's Governor General. Merci, thank you, and many blessings to you, Madame Payette.
Depuis la Confédération, en 1867, la fonction de gouverneur général a constamment évolué et est devenue distinctement canadienne, reflétant ainsi la réalité de la couronne au Canada. Les lettres patentes de 1947 ont redéfini les pouvoirs et multiples fonctions constitutionnelles remplies par le gouverneur général au nom de la souveraine. The letters patent of 1947 describe in detail the Governor General's powers and responsibilities. They also require that this description be read in public when a new Governor General is sworn into office. J'invite M. Stephen Wallace, secrétaire du gouverneur général, à donner lecture du texte de cette commission royale signée par Sa Majesté la Reine Élisabeth II, Reine du Canada.
Élisabeth II, par la grâce de Dieu, reine du Royaume-Uni du Canada et de ses autres royaumes et territoires, chef du Commonwealth, défenseur de la foi, à notre fidèle et bien-aimée Julie Payette, salut. Par notre présente commission, sous notre grand sceau du Canada, nous vous nommons, vous, Julie Payette, notre gouverneur général et commandante en chef du Canada, à titre amovible, avec tous les pouvoirs, droits, privilèges et avantages appartenant ou attachés à la charge. Et par les présentes, nous vous conférons l'autorisation et le pouvoir, et nous vous enjoignons à vous, notre représentante, d'exercer les attributions et d'observer les instructions contenues dans des lettres patentes délivrées sous notre grand sceau du Canada en date du 8e jour de septembre de l'an de grâce 1947, constituant la charge de gouverneur général et commandant en chef du Canada, ou dans toute autre lettre patente comportant adjonction, modification ou substitution à cet égard. Et, en outre, nous décidons par les présentes qu'aussitôt que vous aurez prêté les serments prescrits et assumé les fonctions de votre charge, notre présente commission prendra effet. Et par les présentes, nous enjoignons à tous et à chacun de nos fonctionnaires, ministres et faits sujets au Canada, ainsi qu'à tout autre intéressé, de prendre connaissance des présentes et d'y obéir en conséquence. Donné sous notre sein royal et sous notre grand sceau du Canada, ce 20e jour de septembre de l'an de grâce 2017, 66e de notre règne. Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom, Canada, and other realms and territories, Queen, Head of the Commonwealth, Defender of the Faith. To our trusty and well-beloved Julie Payette, greeting. We do, by this our present commission under our Great Seal of Canada, appoint you, Julie Payette, to be, during our pleasure, our Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief in and over Canada, with all the powers, rights, privileges, and advantages belonging or appertaining to the office. And we do hereby authorize, empower, and command you, as our representative, to exercise and perform all in singular the powers and directions contained in certain letters patent under our Great Seal of Canada, bearing date the 8th day of September in the year of our Lord 1947, constituting the office of Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief in and over Canada, or in other letters patent adding to, amending, or substituted for the same. And further, we do hereby appoint that so soon as you shall have taken the prescribed oaths and have entered upon the duties of your office, this our present commission shall come into effect. And we do hereby command all in singular, our officers, ministers, and loving subjects in Canada, and all others whom these presents may concern, to take due notice hereof and to give their ready obedience accordingly. Given under our royal hand and under our Great Seal of Canada, this 20th day of September in the year of our Lord 2017, and in the 66th year of our reign.
The document just read commissioning Miss Payette is the cornerstone of today's ceremony, signaling the Queen's confidence and our collective pride in her appointment as Governor-General and in her ability to carry out her duties. The Right Honourable Beverly McLaughlin will now administer the required oaths. La prestation des serments doit avoir lieu en présence des membres du Conseil privé de la Reine pour le Canada, composé des membres du gouvernement et d'éminents citoyens canadiens. M. Michael Vernick, greffier du Conseil privé, remettra maintenant à la juge en chef du Canada le texte des serments.
Je lirai maintenant les sermons. I will now read the oaths. Vous, Julie Payette, affirmez-vous solennellement que vous serez fidèle et porterez sincère allégeance à Sa Majesté la Reine Élisabeth II, Reine du Canada, à ses héritiers et successeurs. Do you solemnly affirm that you will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in the office of Governor-General and Commander-in-Chief of Canada, and duly impartially administer justice therein?
Je l'affirme solennellement. I do.
Merci. Just keep going. Yes, okay. Do you, Julie Payette, solemnly affirm that you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, her heirs and successors?
I do.
Affirmez-vous solennellement que vous servirez fidèlement et loyalement à Sa Majesté la Reine du Canada II en qualité de garde du Grand Sceau du Canada?
Oui, je l'affirme solennellement.
Affirmez-vous solennellement que vous servirez fidèlement et loyalement à Sa Majesté la Reine Élisabeth II en qualité de gouverneur général et commandante en chef du Canada, et administrerez-vous la justice de façon convenable et impartiale?
Oui, je l'affirme solennellement.
Do you solemnly affirm that you will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in the office of Keeper of the Great Seal of Canada?
I do.
Le gouverneur-général va maintenant signer les registres des serments que le premier ministre, la juge en chef et le greffier du conseil privé contresigneront. The signed oaths will be kept in the Privy Council oath book as evidence that the new Governor-General has duly taken the oath of allegiance and the oath of office on this day. Please rise, veuillez vous lever. Mesdames et messieurs, la gouverneure générale du Canada, Her Excellency the Right Honourable Julie Payette.
And there you have it. Julie Payette is now Canada's 29th Governor-General by signing those 3 oaths and taking the oaths by the Chief Justice of Canada, Beverly McLaughlin. I believe that's her mother there that you can see, very emotional, her father and her sister also in attendance. A big moment in a life full of big moments for Julie Payette. A 21-gun salute outside of Parliament. Lots and lots of happy faces inside the Red Chamber of the Senate where this ceremony is being held. And in a few moments, we will hear directly from the new Governor-General, who's going to deliver her address to Canadians without notes to give us a sense of what she wants to bring to the job and what she wants to represent for Canadians.
You may be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir. Today's proceedings will feature some artistic performances in addition to the required ceremonial elements. The songs and the artists were especially chosen by Her Excellency for this very special occasion. La première prestation artistique nous vient de deux étoiles montantes de la musique francophone au Canada. Elles ont toutes deux été révélées lors de la saison 2012 de Star Academy et ont depuis enregistré plusieurs albums solo. The friendship of our two performers has led them to a professional collaboration. This summer, they began performing together in their touring show entitled Je te donne. Mesdames et messieurs, veuillez accueillir Joanie Benoît et Mélissa Bédard qui interpréteront une chanson du légendaire Leonard Cohen.
There was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. You don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah.
She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke a throne and she cut your hair. And from your lips she drew the hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot somebody well true, yeah. It's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not someone who's in the light. It's a call and it's a broken hallelujah.
On behalf of Her Majesty the Queen, font of all honors, the Governor General presents honors and awards to recognize those people who have demonstrated excellence, courage, or exceptional dedication to service in ways that bring special credit to this country. The Canadian Honours System is administered by the Chancellery of Honours, which is part of the Office of the Secretary to the Governor General. A newly installed Governor General becomes Chancellor of the Order of Canada, the Order of Military Merit, the Order of Merit of the Police Forces, and head of the Canadian Heraldic Authority. J'invite maintenant la sous-secrétaire du gouverneur général, Chancellerie des distinctions honorifiques et vice-chancelière d'armes, Mme Emmanuelle Sajous, et la directrice et héros d'armes du Canada, Mme Claire Boudreau, à présenter à la gouverneure générale les colliers de fonction associés aux ordres nationaux et à l'autorité héraldique du Canada. Le collier de chancelière de l'Ordre du Canada. Le collier de chancelière de l'Ordre du Mérite militaire. Le collier de chancelière de l'Ordre du Mérite des corps policiers. Et finalement, le collier de chef de l'Autorité héraldique du Canada.
C'est pour moi un honneur d'accepter les colliers de chancelier de l'Ordre du Canada, chancelier de l'Ordre du Mérite militaire, chancelier de l'Ordre du Mérite des corps policiers et chef de l'Autorité héraldique du Canada. I am honored to accept the collars of the Chancellor of the Order of Canada, Chancellor of the Order of Military Merit, Chancellor of the Order of Merit of the Police Forces, and the head of the Canadian Heraldic Authority.
These honors constitute the centerpiece of the Canadian Honour System. The Great Seal of Canada is a symbol used on all state documents representing authority and authenticity. Used on proclamations and commissions, it provides the formal sanction of the Crown to all state documents. The current seal dates back to the beginning of the reign of Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada. J'invite maintenant le registraire général du Canada, l'honorable Navdeep Bains, à présenter à la gouverneure générale le Grand Sceau du Canada. Le ministre est accompagné du sous-registraire général, M. John Nobley.
Merci. Je confie à votre garde le Grand Sceau du Canada. I hand you the Great Seal of Canada for safekeeping. Because you're stronger than me.
Mesdames et messieurs, écoutons maintenant une chanson composée par Félix Leclerc, un homme qui a eu une influence profonde sur la musique populaire au Québec et ailleurs dans le monde. Quartum, whose repertoire includes a wide range of classical and popular music, will perform Moi, mes souliers.
Moi, mes souliers ont beaucoup voyagé, ils m'ont porté de l'école à la guerre. J'ai traversé sur mes souliers fêlés le monde et sa misère. Moi, mes souliers ont passé dans les prés, moi, mes souliers ont piétiné la lune, puis mes souliers ont couché chez les fées et fait danser plus d'une. Sur mes souliers, de l'eau des rochers, de la boue des champs et des pleurs de femmes. Je peux dire qu'ils ont respecté le curé, le bon Dieu et l'âme. ont marché pour trouver le débouché. S'ils ont traîné de village en village, suis pas rendu plus loin qu'à mon lever, mais devenu plus sage. Tous les souliers qui bougent dans les cités, souliers de gueux et souliers de reine, un jour cesseront d'user les planchers, peut-être cette semaine. Non, mes souliers n'ont pas foulé la terre, moi mes souliers ont préféré les plaines. Quand mes souliers iront dans les musées, ce sera pour s'y accrocher. Au paradis, paraît-il, mes amis, c'est pas la place pour les souliers vernis. Dépêchez-vous de salir vos souliers, si vous voulez être pardonné. Si vous voulez être pardonné.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Canada, le Premier ministre du Canada, le très honorable Justin Trudeau.
Assembled right honorables, distinguished guests, dear friends, Vos Excellences,
Your Excellencies,
Monsieur et Madame Johnston,
Mr. and Mrs. Johnston,
Laurier,
Madame
Payette.
Ms. Payette.
C'est pour moi un privilège
It
d'être
is
à
a
vos
privilege
côtés
for me
aujourd'hui,
to be
au
by your
moment
side today,
où vous vous
at a
apprêtez
time
devenir
as you
sa
prepare to
la
become
représentante
the
de Sa Majesté
representative
la Reine
of
au
Her
Canada,
Majesty,
notre
the Queen of Canada,
29e
and our
gouverneur
29th
général.
Governor General.
Un bon nombre de Canadiens
Many
connaissent
Canadians
déjà les détails
are already
de
aware of the
votre parcours
details of your
incroyable.
incredible journey,
Un parcours qui
a journey
témoigne non
that is a
seulement
testament
de votre
not only
talent,
to your
mais
talent,
aussi des qualités
but also to
qui
the
font de
qualities
vous une
that
Canadienne
make you
d'exception.
an exceptional Canadian.
Le 27 mai
On May 27,
1919,
1999,
pays
it was
qui
the
vous a
entire
regardé quitter
country
la terre
that watched you
avec
leave
fierté
Earth
et émotion.
with pride and emotion.
Ce premier voyage a
That
d'abord
first
frappé
voyage
l'imagination des enfants qui,
struck the
d'un
imagination
bout à
of
l'autre
children
du
who,
Canada,
right across
vous ont
this
regardé
country,
attentivement,
watched
vous
you
envoler
carefully
vers les
fly
étoiles.
towards the
Des
stars.
enfants qui
Children
rêvaient de
who
monter dans une
dreamed
fusée,
of
de
getting into
vivre
a
en
rocket
apesanteur.
and living
Un
in
rêve
weightlessness,
qui habitait
a dream
également
that once
autrefois
filled the
une jeune
mind
fille de
of a
Montréal
young girl
qui
from Montreal
regardait des
who
Américains
watched
en scaphandre
Americans in
conduire
spacesuits
une Jeep
drive
sur
a
la
Jeep
Lune à la télé.
on the moon on the
Mais les
television.
enfants
But
n'étaient pas les
children
seuls
were
à
not
être
the only ones
impressionnés.
to be impressed.
D'une certaine façon, c'est
In a
un
way,
moment encore plus
it
grand pour
was
les
an
adultes,
even greater
dont
moment
les
for
rêves
adults
a tendance
whose
à
dreams
s'estomper
tend
au fil des
to
années. Ce
remove
jour-là,
themselves
le Canada
as the years go
apprenait à
by.
connaître une
That day,
scientifique accomplie,
Canada
une
learned to
astronaute
know about an
intrépide,
accomplished scientist, an
surtout une
intrepid
Canadienne
astronaut, and a
passionnée.
passionate Canadian.
Une femme dont le
A
savoir,
woman whose
la
knowledge,
détermination et la
determination,
curiosité l'ont menée à non
and
seulement
curiosity
réaliser ses
led her
propres
not only
rêves,
to realize
mais
her own
également
dreams,
à
but
nourrir
also
ceux de tout un
to
pays
feed those
et de
of
toute
an
une
entire
génération.
country and an entire
An
generation.
educator, a musician, a polyglot, an athlete, a pilot, and a mom who, on multiple occasions, went where very few others had dared to go. A team player, a trailblazer, and a pioneer who proved to boys and girls, men and women across this great country that the sky was, in fact, not the limit. Upon her return, Ms. Payette dedicated much of her time to sharing her passion for science with Canadians and with the rest of the world. She most notably worked as a scholar at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars in Washington, D.C., and was appointed scientific authority for Quebec in the United States. Many Canadians will also remember her scientific outreach programs on Radio-Canada or her time spent at the helm of the Montreal Science Centre, where she used her expertise to educate and inspire. The list of her accomplishments goes on and have earned her numerous awards and distinctions, not only in Canada, but around the world. Your journey through space and through life may be unique, but the qualities that underpin each and every one of your successes are not. Your numerous achievements are above all a testament to your hard work, discipline, and most importantly, your passion. Whether as Canada's chief astronaut or as an Olympic flag bearer, you represent the very best of what it means to be Canadian and to serve Canada with aplomb and integrity. Aujourd'hui,
Today, as Ms. Payette chooses to answer the call to serve Canada a second time, she becomes part of a long tradition of Canadians, exceptional Canadians, who have marked the history of this country. And if you don't mind, I would like to take a moment to directly address one of them, who will very soon be Ms. Payette's predecessor, His Excellency, the Right Honourable David Lloyd Johnston. Over the last 7 years, His Excellency has fulfilled his duties with humility and humanity. On behalf of all Canadians, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Their Excellencies, Mr. and Mrs. Johnston, for their many contributions. You have made Canada a stronger and a better country. Thank you, dear friend.
And while Ms. Payette stands on the shoulders of giants, I have no doubt that she will carry on one of Canada's oldest traditions by shaping this role into her own. As an agent of change and a powerful voice for progress, this two-time extraterrestrial Canadian will bring a new perspective on Canada and on its place in the world. I look forward to working alongside Her Excellency as she continues to go boldly where few others have gone before. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. Thank you, Prime Minister. Now, please join me in welcoming members of Canada's award-winning period instrument orchestra, Taffel Music, performing Mozart's Divertimento in D major, K136 Allegro. Mesdames et Messieurs, Son Excellence, la gouverneure générale du Canada, Her Excellency, the Governor General of Canada.
Monsieur le Premier ministre,
Prime
Madame
Minister,
Grégoire,
Ms. Grégoire,
Madame Chief Justice, members of the Vice-Regal family, Mr. Speaker of the House of Commons, Monsieur le Speaker of the Senate, Indigenous people and leaders, représentants des Premières Nations,
representatives of the First Nations,
ni Danamikwak, Kakina, Ashinabashbek, Uwa ta Tewach, Achich, Kakina, Megwach, Kadaji, Nidu Tamomach. Et je continue. Membres du corps diplomatique,
members of the diplomatic corps, parliamentarians, ministers,
premiers ministres provinciaux, ex-premiers ministres
provincial premiers, former premiers,
invités,
members of the public service,
chers
distinguished
amis,
guests,
membres de ma
dear
famille,
friends, members of my family,
and
colleagues.
friends who came from all over the world. Bonjour.
Good morning.
Je vous salue. Tous,
I
ici
convey
présents,
my greetings to all of
qui
you
avez
who
pris
are
le
here,
temps de
all
venir
of you
voir
who
cette
took the time to come and see
séculaire qui
this
date des
secular
gouverneurs de la
passing
Nouvelle-France,
of the powers that
mais
goes
qui est
back to New
aujourd'hui
France,
entièrement canadienne,
but which is now entirely
et
Canadian
qui représente le
and
fondement
represents
de notre
the very
démocratie.
foundation of our democracy.
Salutations
My
particulières
greetings
à
go out especially to all of those who are watching from the John A. MacDonald
so
room.
numerous in Sir John A. J'aurais aimé que vous
I
soyez
would
là,
have liked
mais je
for
vous
you all
remercie
to be here,
d'être
but I
ici.
thank you for
Vous m'honorez
attending.
tous
You honor
tellement
me, all of
par
you,
votre présence.
through your presence.
And for those of you who came from far, so generously, once again, to send me off on an extraordinary journey. You give me the courage to stand right here in front of you today. I bring warm greetings from our sovereign, Queen Elizabeth II, to all Canadians. Her Majesty welcomed my son Laurie and I in her estate in Scotland just 2 weeks ago. She gave me the responsibility to represent her here in Canada as Governor General, and I accepted the duty with humility. Although, and the Prime Minister mentioned it already, I know this was going to be a tough act to follow. As I try to stumble my way in the footsteps of my predecessors and the footsteps of a great man and a great woman, Governor General David Johnson, Madame Sharon Johnson. Merci de m'accueillir dans votre famille.
Thank you for welcoming me into your family.
De ce passé opérationnel peu orthodoxe
Of that unorthodox
que je partage d'ailleurs avec de
operational
nombreuses
past,
personnes dans
which
cette
I
salle.
share with many people in this room right
Je ne
now.
m'attendais pas à cette
I
nomination
did
comme
not
gouverneur
expect
général.
this appointment
But
to
when
Governor General.
duty calls, there's only one answer. Je suis tellement privilégiée.
I'm so privileged. I'm so honored to have the opportunity to represent you and to speak on behalf of this magnificent country. Prime Minister, I'd like to thank you for your recommendation and also thank you for your confidence in me. And if you don't mind, I'd also like to thank a very proud young man, my son Laurier, who was one of my first advisors and one of the first persons I consulted and who gave me permission to accept the job. He gave me permission, in case you didn't understand. He allowed me to accept the job. I would have liked this room to be bigger in order to bring everyone in so we could all be together. Because there are really a great many of you here. However,
we're all in this together. There's many eminent scientists in this room and lots of great high flyers, and they would tell you that we are inextricably bound by the same space-time continuum, and sorry, but we're all on board the same planetary spaceship. Somehow. But together, the adage says, we can move mountains, can we? With the brains, and our smarts, and our altruistic capability, we can indeed do a lot of good. And it's our duty, to some extent, to help improve the lives of people in our community, to diminish the gap and the inequities here and elsewhere. And maybe if we try hard to work together, then we may have a chance to find the answers, and we may be able to tackle global issues, serious and pressing global issues like climate change and migration, nuclear proliferation, poverty, population growth, and so on, and so on. Because global issues know no borders, no timeline, and they do need, truly, our attention. Je suis une optimiste.
I'm an optimist.
Complètement, mais aussi une
totally,
pragmatique.
but also a pragmatist. And in fact, you can see that with the success of the International Space Station, it's clear that you can always do better together than separately. And we're more than the sum of our parts. Now, there are people in this room who were on the International Space Station and who flew around the Earth and who have been on the space station since it was created in 2000. We work together, cosmonauts, astronauts, people from different countries who on Earth may not see things the same way.
We rarely see the International Space Station in the front of the newspaper, because nothing really terrible happens up there. It works. People working together from different nations for a common good. They not only work together, they put effort together, and they compromise where it is needed. Somehow, the International Space Station, but also big science, force us to think not in the microcosm of nationality only, but to think in terms of what we could do to advance matters and to push the boundary of science as partners in a collective spirit and with a peaceful intent. I know that may sound a little unusual for human beings to adopt such behavior when it comes to opening uncharted territories, but hey, that's a promising development, isn't it?
Lessons we could bring back to Earth a bit more often and apply them to specific cases. Of course, it's easier to say than it is to do. But I believe that here we're in a position, here in Canada, where more than ever, we can make a difference. Because we are rich in values, in openness, in tolerance, self-help, compassion, and because we decided as a people to share our wealth as much as possible, because we believe in equality of opportunity for all.
And I am a product of this country. I truly believe that those very fundamental values unite us all. D'ailleurs, mon ancêtre.
And in fact, my ancestor,
Pierre Payette, dit Saint-Amour, est arrivé sur ce territoire en 1660.
Came to this territory in 1665. He was a soldier in the Carignan regiment near Montreal, and this gives me an opportunity to salute and express my admiration and thanks to all the men and women who choose to serve us in uniform. My ancestor was a military man, but when he was finished that career, he became a farmer, and he decided to set up in Pointe-aux-Trembles in Montreal. He had a lot of children. Several generations later, there I was with my father and my mother on the island of Montreal, and my sister, and here we have another generation. Several years later, another ancestor, François Payette, by name, became a coureur des bois. I imagine that he was good with a paddle, but he was especially someone who was a confidant to the Hudson's Bay Company. And François Payette left to explore the West on the North American continent. And now in Idaho, there is a city, a town, and a river that bear the name Payette. So I'm proud of my origins, but I realized a long time ago that all of our ancestors, mine as well, had been guided and supported by an extraordinary people, the First Nations, who, with their generosity and their courage, through the mountains, through the forests, and through the streams, opened up the way to the rest of us. They were the first pioneers on this land, and they still are.
They taught us to fight the cold and survive in it, how to appreciate the gifts of nature, and they taught us about community. It is a good thing that we finally decided to listen again to their wisdom. La réconciliation.
Reconciliation.
Kidji. Minu. Widji dinanimak. I'm gonna, please bear with me on this one. Kidji megweni. Magoniwash. Misiwe anisnapek. Achish nigan. Abinu. Jija. Ke. Pimadziziwash. La réconciliation doit s'accomplir.
Reconciliation must happen for the welfare of our communities and for the future of our children. And talking about children, we talked about some of the things that interested me when I was a child. But I understand and I know just how lucky I was to be born in this country and to be born in that family. Because my parents gave me an education, the education I had as I grew up, and the opportunities that made all the difference. When I was a young girl, I wanted to be an astronaut because I watched astronauts go to the moon with the Apollo mission. I watched it on television. And yet, I did not even speak the language they spoke. But it wasn't important. I wanted to do the same thing they did. The important thing is that no one discouraged me along the way. And later, the Olympics came up. They came to my city in 1976, and then I discovered a cosmopolitan city with the excitement of wonderful performances and the pride of a country. I wanted to do like them. I wanted to be an Olympian. I wanted to travel, but I didn't have the talent. However, I was never, ever discouraged from trying.
The Prime Minister said that. It's almost as if we talked. We didn't. When you're 8 years old and you find something interesting and you want to do it again, you dream about it, And then somehow, as we grow older, we forget about this, that we are perhaps able to do things that other people tell us we cannot do. This dare to dream is within us. Fast forward, quelques années plus tard,
a few years later, when I was 16, I was able to get a grant to go and study in an international college in Great Britain. And thank heavens, I was encouraged to go, and I left with my faulty English and my 2 suitcases, but full of convictions, and yet with so little certainty.
At 16, when I ended up in a college overseas, I left Canada without a single worry in my heart, because I had been given the greatest gift of all, unconditional love. Because when I left, I knew somehow that no matter what happened, even if I failed, they would take me back. My parents would be there for me, and they still are today. Ma mère Jacqueline, mon père André.
My parents.
Ils m'ont donné des ailes.
They gave me wings, and I took full advantage of them afterwards. I can assure you of that. But when I came back from that trip, I came back with profound convictions. Simple but profound. Education, accessible to all, is the key to any successful society. That diversity is a source of wealth, an asset, that sport can take us very far, that we stand together stronger, and there is no magical solution in life except hard work and moving forward.
Somehow, it's been an amazing journey for us now, but I'm a true believer in the strength of teamwork, in the power of dreams, and on the absolute necessity of a support structure. And this is exactly the backbone of this country. This is our fabric. I am convinced that anyone can accomplish anything and rise to the challenge as long as they are willing to work with others, to let go of the personal agenda to reach a higher goal, and to do what is right for the common good. And this is exactly what I hope that my mandate as a Governor General will reflect. L'un des plus grands privilèges,
one of the greatest privileges that we receive, we who have had an opportunity to see the earth from far above it, is to be able to observe this planet that we all share, the 7.5 billion people, humans on this planet. We are all of the same race, and we share this extraordinary world. This extraordinary world that looks so small in space, with no borders. That's an invention of man, with the atmosphere around it. This planet must be passed on to future generations in good shape, and that should affect every single one of our decisions and choices in life. But seeing the number of young people here in this room, I think things will go fine.
Have a lot of work to do. I think the path is for us to just trust science, believe that innovation and discoveries are good for us, and make decisions based on data and evidence. We are the true north, strong and free, and we should continue all the time to look out for those who have less, to stand for those who can't, to reach out across differences, to use our land intelligently, to open our borders and welcome those who seek harbor, and never, ever cease to be curious, ask questions, and to explore and search. Oh, and by the way, we shouldn't forget to be happy about celebrating who we are and what we'd like to become. Et les jeunes qui sont dans cette salle,
and the young people in this room,
ici, dans le Sénat du Canada,
show us here, right here in the Senate of Canada, the highest authority in this country. All these young people show us that Canada is in good hands. Friends, please aim high. Dare to dream. And Prime Minister stole my best line. It's true. Don't be afraid, because now we know.
À la vie qui nous unit. Merci.
And that is the first public address by Canada's 29th Governor-General, Julie Payette, delivered without notes in multiple languages, calling on Canada to dare to dream, to work together as a team, and to have the sky show no limits. There is no limits for this country. And it was an inspirational speech that she delivered today to that room and to all Canadians. Again, doing it without notes, speaking from the heart about what she wants to change and help improve in this country, calling on Canadians to help her do that. And on a day with an enormous amount of tragedy following a terrorist attack in Edmonton over the weekend where 5 people were injured, and a mass shooting in Las Vegas with now 53 people dead, perhaps the kind of speech we needed to hear.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, our ceremony is now drawing to a close. In just a few moments, Her Excellency and the official party will depart the chamber. We kindly ask that you remain at your place until the end of the programming in the Senate foyer and the departure of the other dignitaries before you proceed to the reception to follow in the Hall of Honor. In a moment, our national anthem will be sung by an artist who is a Canadian treasure. She has recorded 60 albums in French and English, performed in half a dozen films and several miniseries. Elle a reçu de nombreux prix et distinctions, dont une nomination à titre d'officier de l'Ordre du Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the singing of O Canada. Mesdames et messieurs, veuillez vous lever alors que notre hymne national est interprété par l'incomparable Ginette Renault.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons' command, car ton bras c'est porte l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, there is a surprise. The incomparable Ginette Renault, famous Quebec singer, singing the national anthem. That was not on the program, and was probably quite thrilling for many Quebecers and music fans inside the Red Chamber there today. After this, they will leave the Red Chamber and go back for some signing of official documents before they head back outside, where the new Governor General, Julie Payette, will examine the Guard of Honor. She will also lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier a little bit later today. There she leaves now with her son, 14-year-old Laurier Flynn, Payette Flynn, rather, who she said was her first advisor and who first gave her permission to take what is a very public and important role in this country. My guest, Philippe Lagacé, from the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton, is with me. He knows all things Westminster, but you also are just you also were listening with interest to that speech. What stood out for you as things that we should take away as maybe how this Governor General is going to go about her job?
Well, she certainly gave us an indication of what she sees as her agenda, which is working with others, as you mentioned, letting go of your personal agenda, and really a collective understanding of how to achieve things. She also noted that you can achieve your dreams provided that you have a significant support system. So I think that was a pretty clear indication of where she sees her priorities of allowing people to achieve their full potential. Similarly, she did make allusion to the importance of data and evidence in policymaking and to the global challenges that we need to confront, notably climate change, nuclear proliferation, migration, borderless issues. So things that come across from her time, as she was saying, also on the International Space Station, her ability to work with representatives from other nations, astronauts from other nations, and achieve common goals. So that I think that's really what I took away from it as how she wants to, the causes that she wants to promote.
I'm just going to dip into this, another little, I don't think I knew how this was happening, a little surprise ceremony just outside the Senate, in the Senate foyer there. We'll just listen in a little bit more, and I'll bring Phil Lagacé in a moment.
Un chant qui fait appel à la fraternité, à la solidarité, à la grande humanité. Taco chino, taco chino.
All right, one last performance on her way out of the Senate there for the new Governor General, Julie Payette, and her son and the Prime Minister and everyone you see there. Pretty remarkable, I thought, Phil Lagacé, as someone who does a lot of ad-libbing, that she was able to give that level of a speech, eloquent, composed, as I said, in multiple languages, without notes. I mean, that just shows you sort of the kind of person that she is.
That's certainly true, and I suspect we'll see many more command performances from her over the course of her tenure.
And that gentleman just performing was Florent Volant. He's the guitarist. And I was just emailing with some people at Rideau Hall. It was apparently Julie Payette's request to have Ginette Renault perform the anthem, but she asked for everyone to keep it a secret to surprise everybody, which it obviously did. And for people who don't know Ginette Renault, she is a big star in Quebec, so that would blow some people away for sure. And it was a pretty nice moment for the Governor General as well. So you're seeing all the dignitaries leave the Senate Red Chamber right now. And as we said, the new Governor General will go off and she will sign a number of proclamations in the Senate Speaker's office. And she'll also sign the Government of Canada Golden Book. So we have a sense of the kinds of things that are probably going to shape her mandate: science, exploration, knowledge, But I guess this shouldn't surprise me as an astronaut. This whole call of sort of strength in numbers, being united, being a team. I'm interested to see how she makes that into a practical mandate, I guess.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs,
It's certainly going to be a thematic
we now
one, but
invite the former
I agree.
governors general and their spouses, as well as the former prime ministers, to proceed to the Hall of Honor for the reception.
So there's lots of people that are going to leave that red chamber. You saw the Premier of Newfoundland, the Premier of Ontario, former Governors General. There's Jean Chrétien, of course, the former Prime Minister. He's also there. John Ralston Saul. Other dignitaries and well-known Canadians.
The LG of Ontario is there. Elizabeth Dowdesville.
Good spotting. See, I wouldn't have got that one. That's why you're here, to help me.
I believe that's the LG of Saskatchewan.
Do you know all the LGs by heart? Do you do, is there like trivia at your house?
I'm trying to see the others, but unfortunately, we're seeing them from the back.
Yeah. Madame Payette also said it was unfortunate because the red chamber, for people that haven't been in there, is very small. Seating is small, unlimited, but it's just very tiny. So many of her guests, of which she had apparently 400 or so, were at another building across the street. On Wellington.
There's the LG of Quebec.
See, this is amazing. How do you know this?
Probably the LG that gets the shortest shrift in the country. Unfortunately, usually they hide him in the closet. So he's... Another LG.
Let me, we're going to give you a full briefing in a moment of the latest news in Las Vegas, but maybe maybe you guys can just throw me back up on camera for a moment while I brief viewers on what the situation is there. Of course, the ongoing and developing story out of Las Vegas, a mass shooting overnight, the largest in U.S. history. The president has now spoken. He spoke just before 11 o'clock Eastern. He said it was, quote, an act of pure evil. He said that he calls upon our bonds of faith and shared values. The president also went on to say our unity cannot be shattered by evil, our bonds broken by violence. The Las Vegas police also gave an update within the past half hour or so, confirming now that some 53 people are dead, more than 500 wounded. Many seriously injured still, so police were reluctant to commit to concrete numbers because they do expect 58 people killed. They do expect that number to rise. As the day goes on. The family of the shooter, Stephen Paddock, a 65-year-old man from Mesquite, Nevada, who took his own life before police broke down the door at the hotel where he had set up this shooting range, for lack of a better word, to kill people at an open country festival that was happening on the Las Vegas Strip. His family says that they have no idea why he would have committed the shooting, that he was just a guy who went to hotels and gambled. So obviously lots still to uncover in that investigation as to the motive behind why this happened. But it is the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. The president has spoken, 58 people dead, more than 500 injured, and we'll continue to track that story throughout this special day here in Canada, but also across the news network as the day unfolds. Should also tell you that the terrorist attack that happened over the course of the weekend in Edmonton, where 5 people were injured, no one killed, remarkably. The police officer who was injured in that attack now recovering. Charges have now been laid against the man responsible, and we'll bring you more on that too, because I know people very attentive to what has happened in Alberta over the course of the weekend. This is inside the Senate foyer here back in Ottawa, where you can see the new Governor General, Julie Payette, signing the official documents, the official proclamation that make her now Governor General, and the guest book. And I believe we can go to the Senate foyer, where my colleague Hannah Thibodeau has managed to get a good talker over to stand with her and have a chat. Hannah.
Thanks, Rosie. Yes, I have lured Mr. Jean Chrétien to come speak with us about the new Governor General, Julie Payette. So what did you think of her speech in there?
But it's very unusual. She stood there with no notes, and she spoke in the language of the natives, and it was very unusual and very interesting and very successful.
What do you think of the choice of Ms. Payette for Governor General?
I think it's a very good one.
What makes her stand out? I mean, there's a million things, right?
Yeah, there's so much, and you have a good example today. You know, she's a very unusual personality. She is a scientist. She speaks I learned this morning, she even speaks 7 languages, and she's been around the globe. She's been in orbit and came back, and I know her since some years, and I think that she has all the quality to be a very good example to the people of Canada, especially the young people.
What do you think going ahead for Ms. Payette should be? We heard from her say it's going to be science, it's going to be things like the environment, those types of issues.
But, you know, she will promote her convictions and what she thinks is good for Canada. Of course, she's not the government. The government decide. She is a great spokesman. And when she will be traveling, representing Canada around the globe, you know, the people will see a very good representative of Canada because of all the things she's done and all the abilities and the qualities that she can show.
Now, you have chosen 2 governors general in the past. In choosing one, how difficult is it to make that decision?
But you consult some people, and eventually there is a moment when you decide who you take. And, you know, I named the first Acadian, Mr. Leblanc, and after that, refugee. Madame Clarkson, you know, she was a refugee from the war from Hong Kong, and she was a great governor general. And, you know, and I think that the Prime Minister made a very good choice. They asked for if I agreed, of course.
He did ask for your advice.
Somebody asked me, yes.
Somebody asked.
Yeah, they do that. Mr. Harper had done the same thing with Mr. Johnson, too. They had asked me for names, and they have asked me for names.
Now, I can't let you go without asking you, what piece of advice would you give for the new Governor General?
Be yourself. Just do it the way she wants to do it. You know, you can't. If you try to change yourself, you lose it. At one time, they tried to make me a little bit different, and it was a disaster. When I was the leader of the opposition, they got me to read texts and look what I was not. And eventually I kicked them out, and I came back as the old Jean Chrétien, and that worked.
And that worked for you?
She has to be herself all the way, and she will be a very great success, I know, because I know her very well, and she's a friend of my wife and of my daughter and so on, and we know her since years.
Did you talk to her before, after, any time in the, last
Since she has been appointed, no, I have not talked with her.
But are you going to chat with her? And
probably, if she invite me. I guess she might.
She might have you for dinner?
I'm not sure, but I would not be surprised.
You'd be a good guest to have for dinner.
Yes, and if she wants, we can invite her home, too. To be out of the protocol and have fun.
All right. Former
you.
Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, thank you for your time.
Bye.
And he's out of here. He's just out of here like that, Rosie. But lots of good, interesting background from a Prime Minister who made the choice of Governor General in the past himself.
Yeah, some things never change. You can always count on Jean Chrétien to just say whatever he's thinking.
And he might have her over for dinner because, you know, that's where you can have fun, he said, over at his house.
I'm hoping for an invite myself. All right, thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. Okay, if you get other guests, you let us know.
Okay.
That's CBC's Hannah Thibodeau in the foyer of the Senate. We are just now waiting for Her Excellency, I guess I can call her now, to exit the Parliament buildings to do her first official what am I calling it? She's looking at the Guard of Honor. She's inspection. Thank you. Inspection of the Guard of Honor. And there'll be a royal salute played as well. Okay, sometimes I get emails while I'm on air, and I do actually read them, and here's a good one I got from Albert Versteeg, who writes me this, and you'll see why it's relevant in a minute. He writes, as a matter of interest, the commander of the Honor Guard is my daughter, who epitomizes what our present government is looking for. A lieutenant commander in the Navy, chemical engineering graduate, marine systems engineer aboard ship, and the Canadian-born daughter of Dutch immigrants. That's pretty good. And she's got a pretty proud dad who wanted to make sure that she got mentioned today as well on TV and noted for her excellency. So I encourage emails like that when they're relevant. So now David Johnston just goes off back into private life and existence and has to sort of contend with whatever that looks like. And I think he'll be happy to do that, to actually go into semi-retirement, as much as accomplished people like that can retire. And from now on, Julie Payette just starts taking up the mantle of all the ceremonial. What are some of the first things that she would have to do other than this? What would be the first things sort of on her agenda? I guess Remembrance Day would be one.
That's coming up, and there will always be orders in council to sign, documents to sign, getting a sense of the job, getting a sense of meeting with advisors that will fill out her understanding of her role, her constitutional functions. Probably getting an idea as well of what lays ahead in the coming months. These are trips that might be planned, other ceremonies. Everybody's going to be trying to get a piece of her time. And this is one of the difficulties of being Governor General. I think there's a sense, certainly, of the wider social community, civil society, that you're there and you're present and you can be there. But the demands on a Governor General's time are going to be quite significant.
Well, someone who might be able to speak to that is with Hannah Thibedeau back in the Senate foyer right now. Hannah.
Thanks, Rosie. I'm joined by former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson. Thank you for your time today. First off, what do you think of the choice?
I think it's a wonderful choice. The moment it was made, I thought, this is right. This woman knows science. She's an engineer. She's a woman. She brings something very different to this role, and I think that's a good thing. It couldn't help but be a good thing. And she's a warm, wonderful human being. You could see that with her son, who looks so like her, and that will bring something different to the office and to the way she exercises it. I was deeply impressed with her speech. I think she really wants to speak to the hearts of people, and she also wants to do the things that I think most Canadians feel are the right things to do. I think she's on the side of the common good, and her expressions of wanting to help with that terrible gap of income inequalities, with reconciliation with Native peoples. She spoke in Algonquin to people, and I think was very impressive that way. I think she's a brilliant woman and a brilliant choice.
What's the toughest job about being a Governor General?
I think it's physically so demanding that I'm glad she's only, 53? It's physically very demanding because you do travel an enormous amount, and doing that traveling and being up for things. When you go on trips and you have 5 or 6 days in Alberta, I mean, every day you do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 events, and you go from thing to thing, and speech to speech, and award to award, and going among people and talking with them and trying to absorb what they're saying to you. And that's what she's going to be doing, and that's what I did a lot, and I know she will do it, which is to hear what they have to say and then bring it back to people who are in politics and say, look, this thing about fishing isn't working and we've heard it, or this is not the kind of thing that we should be standing for, etc. And the Governor General doesn't have any power but has authority. And authority is very important, and I'm sure she's going to do it. I certainly would give her the advice to talk to the ministers and to the deputy ministers as often as possible, because you find out things, and you can help by saying what you can bring back from the people of Canada. It's terribly important, that feedback, and I think she started out by saying, I am here to talk to you and to be among you, and I think that is exactly the right stance. She hasn't put a foot wrong.
Now, Ms. Clarkson, you were telling me ahead of time you had a little something you wanted to say to Rosie Barton.
Well, Rosie, you sure look pretty in pink.
She told me to.
There you are. I watch you all the time. I like that pink.
I'll take it, Hannah. Say thank you very much.
She said thank you very much. You're very kind. Thank you for your time, Ms. Clarkson. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Rosie.
Thank you. I rarely get compliments on television, so
there you go.
Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate it. This is CBC's Hannah Thibedeau with former Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, along with compliments. She also said a few things there, Phil Lagasse, that I'm not sure that I really knew. So a Governor General can speak to cabinet and even deputy ministers to try and get information. Would that be I mean, ministers maybe, but deputy ministers is a little surprising to me.
I don't think most of us are aware of precisely what the degree of access that vice-regals have in Ontario currently. The LG meets regularly with deputies and with ministers. And I think this, Adrienne Clarkson there just gave us a little glimpse into behind that curtain of Rita Hall, in the sense that you do have access to ministers and occasionally to deputy ministers to try and exercise those powers of the Crown that are informal, the encouraging, the warning, the advising of the government, so that it's not a one-way street, right? The GG can go out in communities, can hear things, and then attempt to bring them back to ministers, to the government of the day, in that role of somebody who travels the country with an agenda of simply absorbing it all. Obviously, it's going to be one piece of advice amongst many, but it's important to have that authority, as Madame Clarkson said. You don't necessarily have the power, but you do have the authority, that formal authority of the Crown.
So what would that look like then in a practical way? Yes, you're listening, you're taking information back, you're feeding it into the government if you think it's relevant. But are you then trying to influence?
Well,
or is that a step too far?
That would be a step too far. As you'll remember, maybe over in the UK a couple of years ago, the Black Spider memos of Prince Charles came out through a protracted access to information campaign. And what was revealed in those memos was that the Prince has a number of opinions about things, and he is not necessarily lobbying as he was charged, but he wants to make his views known, and he wants his concerns at least to be taken into account. And I suspect that's what we're dealing with the vice-regals as well. They're not going to actively lobby for particular causes or for particular policies, and they're not going to threaten anything in terms of withholding a signature or whatnot, but it's simply an opportunity for them to echo concerns that they hear in the community and to ensure that governments are aware of it. One particular area that is of concern is the Governor-General is also Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and past Governors-General have had very intimate relationships with the Chief of the Defense Staff. Tom Lawson, in particular, had a very close relationship with David Johnston. And there you can also have the Governor-General, in his or her capacity as Commander-in-Chief, have access to concerns about how the forces are doing, the morale of the military, and expressing that to the government of the day. So
what would be, for lack of a better word, what would be the clearance? I mean, how much secret or confidential information could you have access to? Anything you want?
Well, technically, this is the second highest office of the state. There's always information that is need to know, but a lot of those orders in council will pertain to matters of national security or other matters. And this is still a member of the Privy Council as well, therefore somebody who should have access to the highest level of information.
So all the more reason to choose someone who maybe falls in line with your thinking a little bit, as definitely seems to be the case with Madame Payette and Her Excellency Payette and the government in terms of science and data and that kind of stuff.
Right. I think they expect her to go out and reach out to those communities and to be a conduit to that community. And look, this is why I said earlier that these appointments are nonpartisan, but they're never apolitical. So there's definitely an aspect of the importance of science for this government, and its centrality in policymaking is something that she is meant to personify and exemplify. And the fact that she has those connections and that outreach is something that I expect this government will seize upon.
And we are expecting her to come out here, obviously, and inspect the ceremonial guard, after which she's also expected to go down to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and lay a wreath, because that is also another important part of being Governor General, those kinds of events. And we will see her at her first Remembrance Day in about a month or so from now. I guess these are just regular people here gathered along the side on Parliament Hill. It's a lovely day here in Ottawa to greet her and cheer her on as she departs from Parliament Hill. I don't know if the landau will be brought out or if she'll just be leaving in the limo, probably just the limo. But Julie Payette, now Canada's 29th Governor General, and she also has her son. And that's another thing that's interesting, because a lot of times this job, which you heard Adrienne Clarkson talk about there, is so demanding. Julie Payette is only 53, so she's not very old, but she doesn't have a partner, a spouse. And the only reason I remark upon that is sometimes you can divide up the work between the two of you. Certainly that's been the case for the others that we've seen, and it becomes helpful to try and break up the work in terms of the country and the demands. And she's going to have to do this by herself.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's interesting. It may actually lead her to have a more progressive, family-friendly approach to the office. She may insist, for instance, that she gets time, either in Montreal here or in Ottawa, to spend time with her son.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of one cabinet minister, Catherine McKenna, that makes it a point to see her children on a daily basis, and therefore, what we're used to and the reality of how you should be can evolve.
For sure. There's Julie Payette. She's exited. Maybe we'll just listen in here if we have any audio. It's a little hard to hear. So you know what I'm going to do? Right in that same location, Hannah Thibodeau is there with a couple of astronauts. And who doesn't love astronauts? Hannah, over to you.
Absolutely, Rosie. How often do you get to speak with two astronauts? I'm joined by David St. Jacques and Jeremy Hansen, who, I'm going to come to you, David. First off, explain, what Ms. Payette is to you.
So I remember when I was a university student, kind of maybe thinking of applying to be an astronaut one day, maybe. That's when Julie was selected. I was too young to apply, and I followed that. I looked, who did they pick? I look at people's CVs, and she was very inspiring to me. She was a French-Canadian, like a scientist, someone who loved sports, music, and I thought, so long as you work hard enough and dream hard enough, maybe it's possible. And so right off the bat, she became an inspiration for me. And then years went by, and one day I got the chance to be selected with Jeremy about 8 years ago. And when we moved to Houston, Julie was there. She was in training for a second space flight. And she became kind of a big sister figure for us. She had been there before, had seen everything, done everything, super welcoming, super keen to pass the baton to the rookies, make sure that, the Canadian astronauts do well, the new guys do well. And so she was, for us, particularly a great model for this very tricky art of concealing your work, your passion, your personal life. She is a champion in that art of making it all happen and all successfully.
So David is giving you kind of a sample of what we're going to see in our next Governor General, but Jeremy as well. What did you think of the speech in there?
Yeah, very moving. I'll just harken back to after I was selected as an astronaut. I remember watching Julie with a crowd early on and just being taken aback by how much she connected with people she'd never met before, but they were just on every word, listening to her. There was a strong connection there, and I felt that again today, where she's speaking to all of us across Canada and on behalf of the world, really. I was really, really impressed.
Now, David, what do you think is going to be more difficult, going to the International Space Station or being the Governor General?
I don't know. Among astronauts, we like to say that our job is life in the fishbowl, because we're always under scrutiny and always people are watching your every move. But I think her new job is another step above in terms of being there, out there, doing everything publicly and having to maintain super high standards. I mean, people's expectations on astronauts are high, but I think on Governor Generals even higher.
And just quickly, I honestly don't have a lot of time, so what piece of advice would you give to Julie?
Oh, just to be her, just like she was today. Just be the real, authentic you. That's what Canadians want.
David St. Jacques and Jeremy Hansen, I want to thank you for your time today here on Earth.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Hannah.
Rosie.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I appreciate that. I've met Jeremy Hansen anyway, and it's pretty cool to talk to astronauts. So the fact that we have a Governor General who is also a former astronaut, and just a reminder of how difficult it is to be one. When she was selected to join the Canadian Space Agency back in 1992, she was one of 4 people selected from 5,330 applicants. So in case you thought, A, no one wanted those jobs, or B, that they were easy to get, you're wrong. And here's our friend Tracy Tracy Ann Versteeg from the Ceremonial Honor Guard. Her dad wanted to make sure she got recognized today just as much as Julie Payette. So now we've made both of them happy, hopefully, or Tracy will be mortified that her dad has emailed me while on TV. So this part, Philip Lagacé, who's still with me here, this is an important role too, as Commander-in-Chief and Governor-General, the inspection of the Royal Guard.
Yes, indeed. So this is, it really does signify the authority of the state over the military, inspecting that honor guard. Civilian control of the military as well is tied into this. So there's, as with many things surrounding the Crown, I know people get fed up with me on Twitter about this, but
we love it. That's why you're
there
here.
are so many layers to these relationships.
Yeah.
And this is really an opportunity for the armed forces to show themselves off. It's also an opportunity here, as we see, for governors general and commanders-in-chief to speak to individual soldiers, know a little bit about them, and to build that connection between the commander-in-chief and members of the Canadian Armed Forces.
And was it Michael Jean who was the first to wear the uniform?
I believe that was Jean Sauvé.
It was Jean Sauvé. So that's not controversial. They are allowed to do that, or is it a little bit? Because I remembered some brouhaha around that.
They're allowed to, and it's established that they are. It's a special uniform made special for the Governor General. Right. They have them for all three services.
Yeah.
There is some controversy. Not everybody's happy with it, and I can also say quite clearly that there's a lot of controversy about precisely what the Commander-in-Chief is.
Right.
Some people say it's a title, other people think it's an office, other people say it's a rank.
Because it's quite different in this country versus the United States.
Exactly. And my own interpretation, for what it's worth, is that Section 15 of the Constitution Act 1867 vests the power of Commander-in-Chief in Queen, so Supreme Military Command Authority remains with Her Majesty, and that the Queen therefore creates the office of Commander-in-Chief for the Governor-General. It does not mean that the Governor-General holds Supreme Military Command Authority. And we know this because the Queen commissions are still done in the Queen's name, so there's a personal relationship between officers and Her Majesty. Nonetheless, the Governor-General signs those commissions as Governor-General, not as Commander-in-Chief. So the Commander-in-Chief role really is more about having a unified presence around the military and representing its service to the state through the Crown.
So it's not like she can order people to go into
combat. You know, that's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
There are some rumors, I won't name which Governor General, but apparently during one situation where apparently a Governor General saw something on TV and picked up the phone and called the CDS and told them to get ready to deploy. I don't know if
this is recently?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any any truth to that, but since
that would be a good one to nail down if we could. Yeah.
So, you know, as with many of these things that happen at Rideau Hall, all we hear are the whispers and rumors after the fact, but there's many happenings that go on.
Clearly it didn't happen, though.
I don't think it happened. My sense is that the CDS probably then called the Minister of National Defense
wise move
to get a sense of what he should be doing.
Oh my, that's funny.
That said, you know, this is one of the risks that comes with this office. It's very important for Governors General to know precisely what they can and can't do. And when you do have these very strong personalities that are used to being at the top of their fields, that are used to having a lot of power, oftentimes it's difficult to keep them within their box, and that can be frustrating for them.
Yeah, that's an awfully good point, because all of these people that we've seen in these different roles, as you say, often top of their game, often very assertive, confident people, which is what you would want in this role, and now having to play sort of a different function, yes, of, as you say, with authority, but not necessarily the power. So how do they walk that line, or where is that line for them between, you know, doing this job versus forcing the government's hand, or trying to do something that they just need to walk back a little bit? And who does that? Who says to them, no, back off a little bit, that's not your job?
Well, primarily the staff at Rideau Hall. So one of the primary roles of the Secretary of the Governor General is to remind the Governor General precisely what they can and cannot do. We don't expect this individual to be deeply wedded in all aspects of the office from the outset.
No, of course not.
There's institutional memory at Rideau Hall. Some of the finest experts in the country about the Crown are those that work in those offices, so they know it inside and out. Similarly, the Governor General can have access to the Clerk of the Privy Council. The Clerk of the Privy Council, I'll stop here. The Clerk of the Privy Council will brief governors general on precisely the nature of their role.
Right.
And as you saw when Prime Minister Chrétien, the former Prime Minister Chrétien, was being interviewed by Hannah, he made the point the government decides. And ultimately, as hard as that may be for a very assertive Governor General to know in certain cases, at the end of the day, they act on advice, except in 2 cases, dissolution and the appointment or dismissal of a Prime Minister. And even then, the vice-regals are usually acting on the nature of the House of Commons. So the degree of their discretion is quite narrow, despite all the letters that they may get from MPs and Canadians across the country telling them to refuse royal assent or to dismiss a Prime Minister or whatever it happens to be. That is not the nature of the job.
And as a Governor General, like, I would sort of want to be thrust into those moments of, those difficult moments, prorogation, dissolution. Those are the moments that you would sort of be tested in that role. But are most Governor Generals trying to avoid those potential moments of confrontation or conflict?
Well, that's the other part of the office. Really, in almost all cases, the Governor General should allow some other institution to figure out the problem first.
Right.
So if it comes to whether or not a Prime Minister has the confidence of the House, your default position should always be to allow the House to express itself first. You should not be dismissing a Prime Minister who hasn't formally lost confidence, for instance. And that's, for example, around the 2008 prorogation. Had Michaëlle Jean refused Prime Minister Harper's advice, she would have effectively been dismissing him without his having formally lost confidence. So it's that's really quite problematic. So to the extent to which the Governor General can allow either the House of Commons and in other cases the courts to deal with particular contentious issues, it is always better for the Crown to act only if it absolutely must.
This is interesting because she's really spending quite a lot of time talking to people, obviously trying to build a bond right from the get-go. The most recent instance where we saw this tested a little bit was in British Columbia, where there was a lot of questions around whether the Lieutenant Governor there, General, would actually go ahead and allow them to test, the Liberals to test whether they had confidence in the House or go ahead and dissolve the House and call an election. And in that instance, I think everyone agreed that they did the right thing.
Right. Well, BC's a perfect example where there were a number of people saying, well, the Lieutenant General should simply dissolve because the NDP government will never be able to hold confidence. They're going to have to name one of their own speaker.
Yeah.
Well, lo and behold.
Here we are.
You waited it out, and it didn't quite turn out that way. And for vice-regals, they have to always be careful not to be second-guessing the will of the legislature and not to think that they can predict the future. It's always better to let legislatures work things out for themselves.
I was just looking again through the notes that Rita Hall provided about ages, because this is, Madame Payette is not the youngest Governor General. The youngest was the Duke of Argyll, which is some time ago, at 33. But Michaëlle Jean was actually 48. Edward Shire was 43. So she's the 3rd youngest Governor General. It's sort of interesting because it is a career that you would think sort of comes sort of at the end of your career. It's hard to know what you would imagine Madame Payette would do after. I mean, I don't think she'd have a hard time finding a job, but it's interesting to take this job now and then see what happens. Michaëlle Jean obviously has gone on to lead La Francophonie in Paris, so she's had her career is prestigious and ongoing. I'll just dip in here and listen for a minute.
You did so well. Thank you so much, everybody. I think it just sets a tone, especially coming in into the Senate. Well, hopefully I would.
A little bit hard to hear, but I do think I heard her, Madame Payette, say that it was a little bit overwhelming. I can't imagine. You're suddenly one day, driving your kid to school, and the next day you're sitting in basically a throne with free jewelry being given to you. Yes. I mean, it's pretty, even for someone who's been to space, I would imagine that the prestige of the role is not lost on her today.
No, and you can definitely hear she's thanking the soldiers for being there. And a good deal of graciousness.
And from here, there will be a little bit of a private reception for the new Governor General. Well, she'll be able to mingle a little bit with some members of the cabinet and other dignitaries, and one would expect these many guests as well that she has brought in who are not able to be there for the ceremony because space is quite limited, but maybe she'll even venture over to the building, the John A. Macdonald building, which has been refurbished. It's just across the street from where she is to see some of her friends that she says has come from around the world to wish her well in this new and exciting chapter of her career. Standing beside the Prime Minister there is Julie Payette's son.
Prêt à l'épaule! Garde d'honneur des forces armées canadiennes. Salut royal! Présentez!
Coming on their way.
Okay, and that's the CF-18 fly past, some aircraft from Bagotville, Quebec, and the Governor General will now go back into Centre Block, the main part of the Parliament buildings there, with the Prime Minister and her son. And as I said, they'll have a bit of a reception in the Hall of Honour, which will be closed to media, so she can down tools a bit and relax. She will eventually leave and head back to Rideau Gate. She'll also head to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier later today. I think David Cochrane is still there at Rideau Hall Gate, or Rideau Hall, standing by, waiting for now the return. Oh, he's at the War Memorial now. See, there you go. And that's where we will find the Governor General next. David Cochrane, sorry, I didn't realize you got to change locations. Lucky you. Tell me what the Governor General will be doing next then from your perspective.
Rosie, I tell you, I don't know if you could feel that. The flyover that you just showed came right over us, and this place just absolutely shook. It was quite something. It was very thunderous here. A more somber and solemn event coming up at least tentatively about an hour from now. Of course, at the National War Memorial, and what's going to happen is Julia Payette will arrive and begin. She'll come here to the steps that lead up to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. She'll be handed flowers, and she'll lay those flowers on the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and then a Canadian Armed Forces piper is going to play the Lament of the Fallen, and a moment of silence will be observed. I mean, in addition to the many, many things the Governor General does, she is, of course, also the Commander-in-Chief of the military. So that's why we're seeing, I guess, the military presence and participation in this particular moment. And this will be the most public event of the day, Rosie, because after here, she gets into a car and she's escorted back to Rideau Hall for another part of the process here. She's going to what will be her new home for the next several years eventually. Not right away, though. She's going to stay at Rideau Gate, we're told, until former Governor General now, David Johnston, it's going to take a while to get used to that, moves out. And they want to do some upgrades and repairs and sprucing things up, and then eventually Julia Payette will move in. So in a little over an hour, expect her to come here and pay respects and lay flowers in the tomb of the unknown soldier in what will be really the most public event of the day.
I don't want to start rumors, but the former Governor General has a lot of grandkids. So I don't know what was happened inside Rideau Hall with all those kids running around all the time, but maybe there's some puttying and repainting to do.
I just wonder if he's got to get some friends together and borrow a truck to move. I mean, that's what I've had to do in the past.
Yeah.
I suspect a former Governor General might have a few more resources, though.
We'll find out if he needs a U-Haul. Okay, David, thanks for your coverage today. Appreciate it. That's the CBC's David Cochran there from the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Let's head back. I believe she's still in the Senate chamber. There she is, Hannah Thibedeau, with us for some final thoughts on the day today. Hannah, you certainly saw a lot of the dignitaries that were there, and those were just a few of the guests that Julie Payette brought with her for this big event today.
You know, she's quite an impressive woman, Rosie, and I think a lot of people, you know, you look at who you surround yourself with, and she surrounds herself with some pretty inspiring and amazing people. We had a chance to speak with fellow astronauts, and the kind words that came from them was quite inspiring. They were saying how she was such a good mentor, how she took them under her wings when she was an astronaut in Houston to ensure that the rookie astronauts were, you know, okay, heading out into space eventually, because the two gentlemen will eventually go into space to the International Space Station as well. But not only that, she stood in front of everyone in that chamber, and she did not have a note in her hand, and she spoke directly from the heart, and you could see that all of those dignitaries in that room were hanging on every single word that she said. She speaks 6 languages, and she opened up in Algonquin, and she wanted to make sure to say that she was saluting the indigenous nations. And she said that in Algonquin, and you could just see that the First Nations representatives in that room were extremely proud to have that moment as well. So, you know, she's an inspiring woman, she is a smart woman, and you can see that she does have a lot of respect from everybody in that room when it comes to her going down the road. And as we heard from Adrienne Clarkson, a former Governor General, she says it's a tough job, but she feels that she's got it well underhand.
All right, Hannah, thank you for your coverage and your great interviews today from up there as well. The CBC's Hannah Thibedeau from the Senate foyer on Parliament Hill. All right, I'm going to bring in Phil Lagacé for one last thought from him as we wrap up our coverage of the installation of the 29th Governor General. So it's sort of cool to see where this is going to go and where she's going to take it, because it is a job that, yes, has specific sort of roles and duties, but you can also sort of make it what you want it to be.
Oh, absolutely. There's a good deal of charities that she can focus on, causes that she can focus on, and similarly, she can craft the office to fit the lifestyle that she needs raising her son as well. So that's going to be, I think, an important precedent that she's going to set as well. If we want people with children or younger people
mothers
of our generation to come in, just define what it is, what she is willing to do, and the amount of time that she's willing to devote to it. I think that's going to be quite important. Similarly, I am looking forward to, I think, like most Crown observers, just to seeing to what extent she is able to meet with ministers, to meet with deputy ministers. We won't know any.
No, we won't know. I was going to say,
it will be interesting to see, even in her public comments, will she be somebody who's slightly more outspoken on the issues that she cares about, given the force of her personality and how eloquent she is. It is possible that we'll see a Governor General who's a little bit more outspoken. And that will be new after 7 years of David Johnston, who played a very classic, almost bedrock Governor General role. But personalities change, and therefore practices change. And I think it's important to note that the Crown, like all our political institutions, are constantly evolving, and personalities do matter in terms of what direction they take and how they change.
And how do you think she will reflect the government's agenda? Because we did hear a lot of that today, and certainly that would have been a conversation that she would have had early on with the Prime Minister, I would think.
Well, I would hope that she does not see herself merely as the government spokesperson. That's the role of ministers, that's the role of the Prime Minister in that partisan vein. What she can do is really, she was selected because of who she is and what she's interested in. So she should express herself and be herself in terms of what she cares about. If that happens to mesh with the government's agenda, excellent, great. But she shouldn't see herself really as a spokesperson for them to that extent. Obviously, when they send her abroad, which is an increasingly large part of a Governor General's role, the soft diplomatic role of doing state visits and whatnot, in those contexts, there is something of an expectation that you're there as a representative of Canada and the government's foreign policy agenda. But in other instances, she should see herself as well as having an independent office, because the Crown and the vice-regal representation role is one that shouldn't be seen as distinct from the government of the day. That's quite important for what it is. Now, of course, that gets blurred sometimes with things like speeches from the throne, but nonetheless, outside of those very strict constitutional bounds, she occupies the second highest office of the state, and let's see what she does with it.
Okay, Phil Legacy, thank you. Appreciate it very much. I was glad you were here to correct me many, many times throughout the course of these 3 hours.
Only once.
Phil Legacy is the Barton Chair at the Normanson Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University, my alma mater. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate it very much. And thank you to our reporters in the ground, Hannah Thibodeau and David Cochran, to our control room, who's been working throughout the day on this. And a special thank you to Tom Dinsmore. He's a man many of you may not know. He's one of the pool producers, producer extraordinaire, who's helped CBC with its coverage for many decades. Anytime the national or other specials have happened around the world and throughout this country, it's Tom's last moment producing something on the air for us. He will be much missed. We're not sure how we'll do it without him, but we'll figure it out. We'll have complete coverage of all the day's activities tonight on the National, of course, at 9 p.m. Eastern on CBC News Network and CBC at 10 p.m. local. CBC Radio will have lots more coverage on the world at 6. If you want a recap of how the day unfolded or this morning unfolded, cbcnews.ca right now, and ongoing coverage of anything else about Canada's new Governor General. That's it for us here in Ottawa. Thank you for joining us. And thanks to everybody for watching. It's been nice to be back on TV. Maybe they'll let me on again. Thanks for watching. And you can watch more coverage of this later today on Power and Politics. Here's a look at some of the moments from this morning as Julie Payette became Canada's 29th Governor General. Thanks for watching.
Do you, Julie Payette, solemnly affirm that you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II?
Je l'affirme solennellement.
Her Excellency the Right Honourable Julie Payette.
The sky has no limit. À la vie qui nous unit. Merci.